We've heard a lot about the wealthiest 1% of Americans, and on this first day in session after Veterans Day, I'd like to talk about another 1%, the 1% of Americans who volunteer to defend us. I want to say a few words about veterans of earlier wars. 30 years ago, thousands of veterans of the Vietnam War came home. They gave themselves a homecoming parade that they deserved, but almost none had ever received. As presiding officer from Virginia here, I know the senator, as a Vietnam veteran, knows of what I speak. With wounded veterans in wheelchairs leading the parade, they marched up Constitution Avenue to dedicate the National Vietnam Veterans Memorial, on whose polished granite walls were etched the names of nearly 58,000 dead and missing comrades in arms. Here's a photograph that was taken that day. This is Joseph Ambrose of Joliet, Illinois. Mr. Ambrose was 86 years old then. He's wearing the same uniform that he wore as a 19-year-old U.S. Army private in France in World War I. In his arms, he carries a flag, the flag that covered the coffin of his son, who gave his life for our country in Korea. Joseph Ambrose wore his old Army doughboy uniform and carried his son's flag often to Veterans Day parades and VFW conventions. He confessed that some years he had to go on a crash diet to get back into the uniform, but he did it to honor the veterans of the Korean and Vietnam Wars that he believed America needed to remember. He wanted it to remind us of an important truth, that no matter the outcome of a war, those who answer the call of duty and risk everything to defend our country deserve respect of a grateful nation. In the 30 years since its dedication, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial has become an almost sacred place of remembering, reconciliation, and healing. It has a special impact on visitors. I was one. As you walk down that incline and this polished granite monument starts to loom higher and higher, and the names just grow until you're engulfed by them, you have a feeling of the immensity of sacrifice that was involved in that war. It was 2.5 years ago that we also created the Family Caregivers Act to help veterans who survived catastrophic and disabling injuries in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the family members who sacrificed so much to help them. I introduced this bill after Senator Hillary Clinton moved on to the State Department 4 years ago. I thought it was a good idea, and it was recommended to me by the family of a wounded veteran, Eric Edmondson. His mom and dad came to me, and his sister as well, and talked about the Caregivers Act. Traumatic brain injuries, as we know, one of the signature casualties of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2005, Eric Edmondson was a 26-year-old Army sergeant. He survived a roadside blast, but then went into cardiac arrest while awaiting transport to a military hospital. His brain was deprived of oxygen for almost 30 minutes. Today, Eric lives in North Carolina with his wife and 2 young children. His mom and dad are there by his side every day. They've moved in together to be full-time caregivers for their son. And the Family Caregivers Act helps their family and so many others make sure that Eric is home with his family where he wants to be, receiving the kind of care that he deserves for his service to our country. So far, more than 130 families in Illinois and more than 5,000 nationwide are part of the Caregivers Program. I'm proud of that program. Post-traumatic stress syndrome is another signature wounds of these wars that we recently engaged in. These wounds aren't visible, but they are wounds to the spirit. They can be just as debilitating and deadly as a visible wound. The Mental Health Access Act, which I'm proud to co-sponsor, would take comprehensive improvements in VA suicide prevention, counseling, and mental health staffing. It would also expand eligibility for a variety of VA mental health services to family members, which are so important. We also need to step forward as well and make sure that we go beyond welcoming home parades for veterans and find them a job. Parades are just fine, but if you really want to support a veteran, hire that veteran. Give that veteran a job. America's military today is the best trained, best educated in the history of the world. They did an enormously good job for our country, and they can do the same for businesses across America. For too long and on too many important issues, we in this Senate have tied our own hands with excessive rancor and partisanship. I hope in this lame duck session and beyond that at least on the issue of helping our veterans, we can come together on a bipartisan basis.